From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. One of the most closely watched races in the nation is right here in Oregon in the 5th Congressional District. That's because whoever wins in November could determine which party controls Congress. Pretty high stakes. Two Democrats in the race are in a heated battle to win the primary election on May 21st and the right to take on the Republican incumbent freshman representative Lori Chavez-DeRemer in November. Chavez-DeRemer is Oregon's only Republican congresswoman and does not have a primary opponent. We'll talk with her closer to the general election. In this episode of Straight Talk, we meet the two Democratic candidates. But first, here's a map of Oregon's 5th Congressional District. It is politically diverse. Experts say one of the few true toss-up races in the country. The district stretches from the Portland suburbs east through the Cascade Mountains into the high desert of Central Oregon. And now to our candidates. Jamie McLeod-Skinner is an attorney, an engineer, and a small business owner from Terrebonne in Central Oregon. She's run for Congress twice before. In 2018, she won the Democratic nomination in the 2nd Congressional District, but lost to Republican veteran Congressman Greg Walden. And in 2022, she beat longtime Congressman Kurt Schrader, but lost in the general election to Chavez-DeRemer. She also ran for Oregon's Secretary of State in 2020, but lost in the primary to Shemia Fagan. McLeod-Skinner currently serves on the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board and is co-chair of the Water and Climate Committee. McLeod-Skinner points to her work in rural communities and believes she can help bridge the urban-rural political divide. Janelle Bynum is the mother of 4, an engineer and small business owner who owns 4 McDonald's restaurants in the Portland area. She is a 4-term Oregon state lawmaker representing House District 39, which includes Happy Valley and North Clackamas. If elected, she would be Oregon's first black member of Congress. Bynum says voices like hers are needed in Congress. We'll talk with Representative Bynum in our next segment. First, I'm pleased to welcome our guest, Jamie McLeod-Skinner. Welcome back to Straight Talk. It's so nice to see you again.
So good to see you. Thank you.
You have been on the show before a number of times in previous races. All your races were very close. But some people wonder, why don't you start at the county seat level, running for county commission, maybe a state legislative seat? Why jump back into a congressional race?
Well, this is where my skill sets are, and this is what's really needed for Oregonians right now. I mean, the skills, the experience I bring. In the past 20 years, I've spent 12 of those elected in urban and rural areas, including in rural Central Oregon, working on an education service district. Understanding issues throughout this district is what's really key right now, and also being able to address climate issues, working to protect our fundamental rights, and then also the working family issues that are so critical around affordable housing and healthcare and childcare. These are things I'm working on right now and have experience doing, and those are the skills we need and the representation we need in Congress.
Well, your opponent points out that she has beat Chavez-DeRemer twice in House district races that include Happy Valley, and you lost to Chavez-DeRemer. Does that give Janelle Bynum an edge?
Not at all. I beat Lori Chavez-DeRemer in the same parts. The fact of the matter is there are no Republicans elected in the Portland metro area where my opponent's elected. That's an easy place for a Democrat to run. What's challenging is outside of that area, and those are the areas where I'm really strong. The purple counties, if you will, of Clackamas, and I'm not talking about northern, I'm talking about the full Clackamas County. I actually beat Lori Chavez-DeRemer there last cycle. I beat her in Central Oregon. In Central Oregon, Deschutes County, I've actually outperformed every Democrat running for president since 1964. So no other Democrat has the strength in this district. And a congressional district is 10 times the size of a House district. So where my colleague opponent is serving right now has a very small overlap with this district. You know, it's in the Portland metro area where it's just an apples to oranges comparison.
Now, Janelle Bynum points to her experience as a lawmaker, 4 terms in the House, and a track record of results, something she says you don't have. What qualifications can you point to that make you, in your opinion, the better candidate in this race?
Well, I mean, that's her political positioning, and she just doesn't have the experience on the issues that Oregonians in this district really care about. So the work I've done in leading affordable housing, I'm actually working on an affordable housing project now. The work I've had in addressing the climate crisis and leading wildfire recovery here in Oregon. When I served on a city council, it was actually a larger area than the area that she has served, and so I've been in urban areas and rural areas. Her experience is limited to urban areas and limited to just the state issues, not on some of these local issues and federal issues. To serve at the federal level, it's really about allocating resources that will be used at the local level. So that experience on the local level is really key. And a couple other things, working family issues, again, on those affordability issues, I'm the one with experience in those areas. And I'm accountable to Oregonians. That's a really key thing in this race. So not taking corporate PAC money, I've never have. That's something that she's done. That accountability is really key in this race. And then actually I also have to say, just because you voted doesn't mean they've been good votes. The thing that she's getting a lot of heat from is being the only legislator, Republican or Democrat, to vote against extending protection for rape victims. She did that a couple of years ago. She stands by that vote.
Well, she says she did vote for it after that. That was just an initial vote.
Well, that was not an initial vote. That was for 7 years. She came back, and it was for only 5 years. That's when she voted for it. But she stands by that vote, by voting against for 7 years. The difference between 7 and 5 years, here in Oregon, the statute of limitations, the time you can seek justice for someone trespassing on your property, is now longer than someone trespassing on your body. And so her push was to get it reduced to 5 years. That is something
that
we'll
ask her about. Yeah,
ask her about that. That's
you
key.
mentioned PAC money, and you have pledged not to accept Super PAC money. And that's something that you've pledged in previous races. You've talked about it here. But money is pouring into this campaign to your opponent. If you were to win in the primary, there'll probably be a lot more in the general election. Doesn't this put you at a disadvantage?
Not at all. Last cycle, I actually outraised not just Lori Chavez-DeRemer, but also every Democrat running for the House here in Oregon. And I did that taking small dollar contributions, not taking corporate PAC money. And so if you got a lot of money coming in from a lot of different folks, you can actually outraise someone else. That's what I've done. In the 20 years I've been involved in politics, in the 12 years in elected office, I've never taken corporate PAC money. It's about accountability, because behind closed doors, that's when decisions are really made and legislation's developed, and that's when the influence comes in of corporate PAC money. So I'm really proud of that record. But, last cycle, Republicans targeted this race and spent $8 million on it. This coming cycle, Democrats have already committed to prioritizing this race in the general election. And so we will have outside resources as well.
I want to ask you about a little bit of a controversy that's been following you. There have been some media reports about some former staffers who alleged that you created a toxic work environment and quote, that you were a nightmarish boss. And the Willamette Week had a report in January that said some staffers said that you made physical contact with a driver and that driver texted that he was afraid you were going to hit him. And those allegations have now made it into some attack ads against you. Is there any truth to those allegations?
No, they're political attacks and they're false. And they're also driven. The named source is someone who's a donor and a major advisor to my primary opponent. And so the way that they set this up is they have a way of communicating with folks to be able to get things on the air. And it's all driven by my primary opponent.
But what about the Willamette Weeks that it reviewed the text that the driver wrote? And even though that driver wants to be anonymous and off the record, he confirmed the physical contact.
No, there was no physical contact. And that was not the case at all.
Can you think of any situation where the driver might have felt threatened? Why would he say something like that?
That's a question for him. That's just not the case. He was someone, he's 50 pounds bigger than me. He was much larger than me. We would drive together. We attended events. All sorts of folks who have attended our other events would see that it was always a positive engagement. There were times that, frankly, we almost got in car accidents, and I asked him to slow down, but I would brace myself for impact when that would happen. But that's just not the case at all. So those are political attacks. They're false allegations, but it's very much an attack to, it's a personal attack.
Would you say you were a tough boss?
I am accountable, and just as I'm accountable to voters, my expectation of my team is to be accountable to those resources that are being allocated to get the job done. It's about being fair, it's about being accountable, but what voters are talking about and voters are asking about is really the issues that we're working on, and frankly, facts like the vote that my primary opponent took on not extending protection to rape victims. The actual votes and those actions are things that folks folks are most concerned about. And I've had all sorts of teams, all sorts of folks from my team who have reached out and talked about what a positive work environment's been, how I've built teams, and how we're really proud of the work we've accomplished. I've actually worked with hundreds of volunteers. So the work we're doing on behalf of Oregonians is really important. We're really passionate about that. Campaigns are not for everyone, but that's work that we're really proud of doing.
One of the issues I know is really important to you is addressing the climate crisis. And the New York Times recently had an article about how scientists are alarmed about the rising temperature in the ocean, and they feel that we may be at a tipping point when it comes to the climate. What do you think you could do as a freshman representative in Congress in a highly polarized environment in Congress to make a difference?
Well, I can tell you what I've already done, and that is both work on the trajectory, getting us off the trajectory we're on, but also those local issues in preparing people for the impacts we're seeing. So on the big picture, we need to establish a renewable energy grid. That's something, part of that was already in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Lori Chavez-DeRemer helped to cut some of those resources out of. We need to be investing in that kind of protecting our energy grid and strengthening our energy grid with renewable energy sources. We also need to be addressing the impacts we're seeing. So I led wildfire recovery here in Oregon in a small town that lost a third of its homes and businesses to wildfire. That's experience that resonates throughout the district because, wildfire doesn't check party affiliation when it's burning down our homes. Oregonians are passionate about this issue. There's also issues on the heat domes and the heat waves we're seeing. So just one small thing we could do there is make sure that when we reauthorize the Stafford Act, which funds FEMA, that we actually include heat domes and heat waves. That's not covered currently. So at the federal level, we can't be protecting folks who are being impacted by the effects of climate change. But we need to think big picture and address the trajectory. We also need to create those solutions on the ground. And that's all experience I've got. And frankly, my primary opponent does not.
We only have about a minute and a half left, but I quickly want to ask you, what can we expect if you win the primary? What can we expect in a rematch between you and Chavez-DeRemer? Why do you think you could win this time?
Well, it's a very different political climate. I actually outperformed our elected governor by 7 points in the district last cycle. So I'm well positioned. We made some adjustments to our team and to our strategy. But Lori now has a voting record, and it's not been good for Oregonians. She's voted against making sure we protect abortion access, she's voted against the environment, she's voted against veterans' health care, against food access for hungry Oregonians. So I am very well positioned to win in November. And my colleague opponent in the primary cannot tell you, she can tell you that, but the facts aren't there. So I'm well positioned to win in November. We got to get through this primary, and then we will beat Lori Chavez-DeRemer in November.
Well, let me give you 30 seconds for a final pitch to voters today.
Yeah, really, the bottom line is caring about people, our planet, and our fundamental rights. We need to make sure we're protecting access to abortion, health care, and IVF. Need to make sure we're protecting our climate and our environment. We spoke about that. And then also mostly addressing those challenges that working families are facing. I've got experience in all those things, from affordable housing to health care to child care. Those are the challenges. Retirement with dignity. My primary opponent voted against vote to cut pensions for teachers and firefighters. So we need to protect these things and make sure we're addressing the challenges of Oregonians in urban and rural areas. I will win in November because I've got the base throughout the district to do it. And I would just be so honored to represent Oregonians, be the first out LGBTQ member of Congress from Oregon, and also bottom line is I'm driven by love of community and love of service.
Jamie McLeod-Skinner, thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk. If you'd like to find out more about Jamie, check out her website, jamiefororegon.com. After the break, we meet our next Democratic candidate in the 5th District, Oregon State Representative Janelle Bynum. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. We're talking with the Democratic candidates in Oregon's 5th Congressional District. We met candidate Jamie McLeod-Skinner in our first segment. Now it's time to meet her opponent, 4-term Oregon lawmaker Janelle Bynum. She represents House District 39, which includes Happy Valley and North Clackamas. Janelle, welcome back to Straight Talk. It's so nice to have you here. It's been a while.
It has.
As you know, there is a lot at stake in this race. Yes. Political analysts are saying that the balance of power could hinge on this race. Now, your opponent, Jamie McLeod-Skinner, was the Democratic nominee in the last election. She came close to beating Lori Chavez-DeRemer. Why do you think you're the better choice to be the Democratic nominee this time around and defeat Lori Chavez-DeRemer in November?
Well, first of all, I win. I've won 4 elections in a purple district. I've been able to serve my constituents, meet them where they are, whether they're rural, urban, suburban, a full spectrum of different types of voters. I've been able to lead on some of the biggest and best legislation that Oregon has produced in the last 8 years. So whether it's on the CHIPS Act with $43 billion of economic investment, 6,000 jobs, or reproductive health equity, equal pay, environmental leadership, housing leadership. So I have a proven track record of success. I win elections. I come as a mom of 4, an electrical engineer, a small business owner, and I just come fully stacked, ready to win the election. And I've beaten Lori Chavez-DeRemer not once, but twice, and I'm ready to do it a 3rd time.
Your opponent says that although you have beaten Chavez-DeRemer twice in the House district that you represent, that's much smaller than the geographic, politically diverse Congressional District 5, in which she says she's outperformed Democrats, that the Governor Kotek got 42% in that district and she got 49%. Does that give her the edge?
Well, it's really an indicator of success, the type of success that I believe I'll have with the number of endorsements that I've had. 4 newspapers, the Oregonian, Willamette Week, the Bend Source, the Portland Mercury, 3 governors, grassroots support from the top to the bottom. I have the most endorsements of any candidate on the election ticket. And furthermore, it matters that you're meeting voters where they are. So in the polls, I'm up consistently. It's the data is telling us that I am the stronger candidate over and over and over again. And to put a fine point on it, I win.
Well, let me ask you about some of your tenure in the legislature. You've championed a lot of issues. I'm just going to name a few of them. Voter engagement, investment in K through 12 and higher education, juvenile and criminal justice reform, reproductive care. You've been recognized for your tireless efforts to pass landmark legislation on police accountability and mental health workforce investments. You mentioned the CHIP Act. Which of those, if you could pick one issue or one of the other issues you've worked on, would you take to Congress and try to work on at the national level? And how do you think you could do that in this polarized environment that is our Congress today?
Well, job one is making sure that Roe becomes law of the land again. One of the reasons that I got into politics was in 2016, I was, just kind of talking with my mom about whether I should jump into a House race. And she said, if your generation doesn't stand up, my generation will have worked for so many, good policies like reproductive care, and we'll lose them. And she was right. So as a member of the sandwich generation, what I'm looking forward to is protecting those things that our mothers and grandmothers fought for. And then as a mother, I'm looking to make sure that our young people have opportunities. I think that's really the essence of what needs to happen in Congress. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our elders and that we're passing opportunity on, which is what I ran for in the beginning. So in addition to codifying Roe, one of the issues that I think unifies the district and quite frankly unifies the state is housing. So making sure that we have infrastructure dollars, so for water, for sewer, broadband, streets, roads, making sure that we have all of those things so that we can build the number of housing units that Oregon is so desperately in need of.
Which is a #1 priority for the governor right now. You've praised the work that the Oregon legislature has done on campaign finance reform, yet in this race we're seeing a lot of outside money being poured into this race and into District 3 from outside sources from a group called the 314 Action Fund, and because it's an independent expenditure, so-called dark money, people don't know who's behind the money. Your opponents pledge not to take any Super PAC money, and she's done that in the past because she says it avoids conflict of interest. How do you square your support for campaign finance reform with all this money coming into your race to support you?
Well, actually, the money that I've raised in my race came from grassroots Oregonians, and it's really interesting. I think the messaging that we've used with voters has been very positive. It's been very supportive, like I said, of this idea of families and passing opportunities on. What I think is necessary in Congress is a deeper conversation about overturning Citizens United. I'm fully in support of that. And we also want to make sure that we're, as a candidate, I think what is difficult to illuminate, and I hope this comes through, is that you really want to be able to tell your own story. And so that's why I've been out talking with voters. That's why I've been raising my own money. My opponent hasn't been able to raise the money that I have in sharing my story. So we've been up telling our story for the last 4 or 5 weeks.
But there's a lot of money coming into your campaign from outside expenditures running attack ads against Jamie McLeod-Skinner. And also there are reports saying that some of this money from the 314 action funds coming from the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee. Do you know if that's true or not?
I don't, but I can say that Jamie McLeod-Skinner was happy to take the endorsement of 314 the last cycle, and so I don't see that much of a difference.
But does it bother
now.
you that you don't know who's behind this money?
Which is my point. I raised my own money and have been able to tell my own story. It is bothersome when you can't tell your own story and someone wants to tell it for you. I think that's actually one of the things that I've talked about in the legislature a lot is agency. And especially as we want to invite more people of color, women, underrepresented people in lawmaking bodies, it is very important for them to tell their own stories.
Let me ask you about a vote that you've been criticized for a few years back in the Oregon legislature as the only lawmaker to oppose a bill extending the statute of limitations for survivors of sexual assault to file a civil suit. It was extending it from 2 years to 7 years. Why did you initially vote against that bill that extended it to 7 years?
Well, I voted for it to come out of committee, and I voted for it.
When it was changed to 5 years, though, right? When it went to the Senate and came back to the House, and it was 5 years, not 7.
The details are a little bit difficult to remember that far back, but I will tell you I was in support of it. What is a technicality, and I think this is really important, is that in the legislature I bring my perspective as a mother of 4, so of a mother of girls and a mother of 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 boys. And it is important for us to have for us to have justice for everyone. And so the conversations that we have in the legislature or in any legislative body shouldn't be cherry-picked. They should be consumed as a larger conversation. And the point that I'm just trying to make is that we have to make sure that we protect victims in the beginning. And I didn't think that we were doing that. I didn't think that we were front-loading the types of justice that victims needed in the beginning. I'm the mom of a kid who has suffered some very bad We've had some really tough challenges with attacks.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I bring that perspective, and I think we should do more up front. I didn't think the legislature was taking
Would you vote the same way again?
I would be a little more sophisticated in how I addressed the issue. I know more now on how to tell, like the chair, like, hey, we should talk about this. And I felt like we hadn't talked about it enough.
If you could pick one thing, and we have about 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure I give you time at the end for a final thought, but if you could pick one thing that you're most proud of that you achieved in the legislature, what is it?
I would say it was the CHIPS Act work, because it was something that unified Democrats and Republicans. We were talking about economic development. We were talking about what's available for our kids to come home to, whether it's them working through high school and working through our CTE programs, or if they go off to college and get advanced degrees. There were jobs here, and I wanted us to make sure that we were always thinking about what does the future hold for Oregon's children.
And let me give you about 30 seconds to tell me, if you are the Democratic nominee, what is a matchup going to look like between you and Lori Chavez-DeRemer as we go into the general election?
Well, I think it's important, again, unfortunately, I think there will be a lot of money that will come in, which is challenging, but I think it'll be important for me to tell my story about the type of leader that I am, how making sure that people who aren't necessarily near the center of power can count on me to show up for them, can count on me to carry their story, their pains as well as their triumphs, and to focus on the things that really matter. So whether it's reproductive health care, mental health care, housing, wildfire and environmental protections, all of those issues will be on the table, and I'm confident that I will win.
And let me give you 30 seconds to let the voters know of a final pitch.
Well, I am a proven leader, again, with a track record of success. I've served in a purple district for 4 terms now, 8 years, all while balancing being a mom and being a state legislator. It's been an honor to serve, and I will continue to bring to light all of the issues that Oregonians feel are very important for their leaders, and I will serve with courage and honor.
Well, Janelle Bynum, it has been a pleasure to have you back on Straight Talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our candidates, Janelle Bynum and Jamie McLeod-Skinner. And thank you for watching. Check out JanelleBynum.com. That's her website. Remember, your ballots are due back at 8 p.m. Tuesday. Then tune into KGW and KGW.com for the latest election results.